Okay, so second one there, you should have that historic document outline created. Okay, so with the historic documents, like I said, there are 5 of them that you've got to be familiar with. And we're going to look more in detail with some of them, others not so much, just so you have the information when it comes time. Right? So the first learning target involves the Declaration of Independence. And it basically says that we should be able to explain grievances in the Declaration of Independence and relate them to the Enlightenment. So these are our 3 big grievances down here at the bottom of the screen. What it's saying is I should be able to use these 3 and connect them to the Enlightenment. So think about last year in the Enlightenment with Mr. DeBalder, Mr. Lee, probably talked about John Locke, Thomas Hobbes, Montesquieu, Voltaire, all those good guys, and everything else. Okay. 2 things that we use a lot here in America based off the Enlightenment. The social contract, they're basically saying that the government and the people have to work together, that the government has to protect the people. Right? If the government is not protecting the people, the Enlightenment says that the people should do what to the government? If the people don't feel the government supporting them or doing what they're supposed to, what should the people do to the government?
Criticize them.
No, we'll criticize them, but what if they want change? What do they have to do with the leader? They've got to get rid of the leader. They got to overthrow the government. Okay, so here we don't overthrow the leader or whatever. We just elect somebody new. Okay, so social contract, essentially, if the government's not doing their job, the people can overthrow it. Right? Natural rights, these are rights you're born with: the right to life, liberty, property. You have the right to breathe. You have the right to food and water. You have the right to live, and that's what they're looking at there. So look at those grievances there, a series of complaints against the king. So we said that the king was violating the social contract because he wasn't doing things that he was supposed to do for the colonists. Okay, you look at that second one, the French and Indian War. Again, we said that the British weren't abiding by the social contract because they were forcing the colonists to pay more and do things with it. Okay, and then you look at that third grievance, acts of tyranny against our rights. Obviously, we were saying that they were violating our rights. Okay, so we use the Enlightenment as a source to use to make our Declaration of Independence. And then, of course, the final one on that screen, and there's about 4 or 5 dates that you have got to remember, and this is one of them, July 4th, 1776, when the the Declaration of Independence is written. Okay, so you make sure you remember that date. Am I still copying that? Good. Next learning target. Show how the Northwest Ordinance, in providing for the government of the Northwest Territory, established a precedent for governing the U.S. Okay, so before again, I'm going to put this slide back up here, but this here, if you look in the green on this nice blurry map, that's the Northwest Ordinance. Okay, so, or the Northwest Territory, I'm sorry, that's what the ordinance is about. So basically what they did is they looked at this whole green area here, and they said, we're going to set laws for this area for them to become a state. And then we're going to let them decide how big of states they want to become. So they basically said there, if you look, there's 5 states. They said we could create anywhere from 3 to 5. So technically, we could have made Ohio and Michigan into one state, one big state. We could have made Wisconsin and Illinois into one big state. Then we could have merged Ohio and Indiana, whatever. We could have made 3 big states, but we decided to make 5 average-sized states. Okay, so based on that, the Northwest Ordinance sets a precedent. And it says if you want to become a state in America, here are the things you need to do. Here's a 3-step plan. 1, you have to be Republican in stature. That doesn't mean Republican Party. It means republic, means a democracy. All right, so if Jacob takes over a state, he can't come in and say, hey, I want my state to be a monarchy because I want to be the king. Okay, can't do that. If you're going to have a state in America, that state has to be a democracy just like everything else. Okay, schools were encouraged. That's not one of the steps, but that's something they pushed for. Assured your basic rights. 6th Amendment trial by jury, speedy trial, all that. First Amendment were your freedoms. The First Amendment's, you've got 5 freedoms. What 5 freedoms do you have in the First Amendment? Freedoms of what? Just blurt them out. Okay, freedom of speech. What are the freedoms we have?
Life.
No.
Right.
Hmm?
Right.
No.
Liberty.
No.
Good happiness.
No. That's preamble. Like freedom of speech. If I'm writing it down, I got freedom of press. Okay, I've got the freedom of religion. I've got the freedom of petition, which basically means that I have the right to, try to change things, through the government if need be. And then the right to assemble, right, which would be almost like protest and those type of things. Okay, so second thing is, if you're going to make a new state in America, you've got to guarantee those rights. And then the last one, if you're going to make a new state, that state is not allowed to have slavery. So after 1789, any new state coming to America was not to have slaves. Okay, and then if you look at that last one there, I know the screen cuts off the first 2 states. Those first 2 states should be what too? Ohio and Indiana. Okay, so those are the 2 that are cut off. Okay, so I'll leave that up here for a second. Mr. Long. Yep. Hmm. Anybody still copying that? Okay, last one we're going to look at today. Target 7, the Constitution. And basically they're saying here, why did we create the Constitution and how does the Constitution connect to the Enlightenment? All right, so first thing we look at is the fact that with the Constitution, we wanted to make it because we thought the Articles of Confederation were too weak. All right, some of the issues we said was national affairs. The states had more power than the national government. Right, there was no executive or no judicial branch. Well, if there's no executive and no judicial branch, what's the only other branch left? Judicial, executive, what's the third one?
Legislation.
Legislative. Okay, so that's all we had was a legislative branch. National government couldn't settle disputes. So back then, if Ohio wanted to declare a war on a country, they could, but the United States of America couldn't declare war. All right, so again, that power. And then finally, requirements to pass legislation. All right. Today, it's 3/4 and 2/3 to pass. Back then, it was unanimous. You had to get all 13 colonies on board. Okay, so a lot harder to pass something. I'm still copying. Good. So what were some of the national issues we were looking at and saying, hey, we need to fix? Paying for the Revolutionary War. Think about the government. How does the government get money to help pay things? They make you pay what? They make you pay taxes. Well, back then they said, hey, national government, you're not allowed to pay tax. You're not allowed to charge people taxes. All right, that'd be like me telling you, hey, you got to pay me a bill every month. And by the way, I'm not going to give you a job or give you any money. Kind of hard to do. Okay, so we didn't like that. The British were refusing to leave America. But as the United States, we couldn't do anything about it. The states had to. Spain was trying to close the Mississippi River. Again, the U.S. couldn't do anything about it. The states had to. All right, if 2 states were arguing over trade or over land, we couldn't do anything about it. If Ohio and Indiana wanted to go to war, they could go to war with each other because the U.S. government had no control over that. All right, same thing with economic problems. Okay, so those are all problems. Those are all issues that we were having. One more slide, I promise. Okay, so we have a constitutional convention to basically, fix and create a constitution, get rid of the articles. So first thing on there, we strengthen the structure of the national government. We give the national government more power. Okay, we then create our three branches of government. So we say, okay, the heck, we just have a legislative. We're going to create an executive, and we're going to create a judicial branch. Okay, we make it so the U.S. government can tax. We make it so the U.S. government can raise an army. We make it so the government can regulate trade. Again, giving the federal government more power to the national. Okay, and then we also make sure that states know their powers. So we have, okay, here's powers that the national government has. Here are powers that the state government has. All right, and then finally, how does that all connect to the Enlightenment? Well, in our preamble, as we said earlier, we have the right to life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. It goes right along with the social contract. Okay, we basically say if the government doesn't do what it's supposed to, we can change it. The first three articles talk about separation of powers, which is something Montesquieu talked about. And then Article 1 talks about protecting your rights, John Locke, and natural rights. So there's that connection there. Okay, so we will look a lot more at the Constitution in detail over the next week or so, but kind of where we are now. All right. Next week, one of the 2 days, hopefully Performance Matters is up and running. If it is, we will take our baseline test on Monday and finish this paper on Friday or Thursday. Okay, if it's not working, then we will take our test on Thursday and go over this on Monday. So we'll either take the test at the beginning of the week or the end of the week, depending on the schedule. All right.